It may seem like the U.S. empire has demonstrated a resurgence with the recent Bolivia coup, but Bolivia is just one part of the global situation, and in a larger context, the empire continues on a path to ruin. And I'm going to detail the ways that the empire continues to go down a tailspin towards towards becoming as relevant as the Roman Empire or the Spanish Empire or the British Empire and any other given past empire. Firstly, the empire's latest victory isn't nearly as stable as its previous recent victories. In the aftermath of the U.S. facilitated Honduras coup in 2009 and the U.S. coup in Ukraine in 2014, there wasn't quite the kind of resistance that we're seeing in Bolivia today. There were mass protests against the coup in Honduras, but from what I can tell, there weren't massive efforts towards armed resistance and quite the extent of civil disobedience and popular determination to stop the regime change operatives that we're seeing now in Bolivia. There's a truly epic and frankly awe-inspiring effort from Bolivia's worker peasant movement and from Bolivia's indigenous majority to save themselves from the fascistic takeover that the United States is facilitating in their country, and that's notable because when you look at what's happening in all these other countries, in Chile, in Ecuador, in Haiti, in Honduras, in Iraq, throughout the past year in particular, there have been these massive protests against neoliberalism and ultimately against capitalism and against neocolonialism, against the imperial forces that have subjugated poor and indigenous people throughout the third world for so long, and these two factors, the massive resistance within Bolivia and the larger anti-neoliberal resistance throughout the third world, are what makes are what really demonstrates the weakness that the imperialists find themselves in this situation, and the coup operatives within Bolivia, they are in a vulnerable position compared to, say, the U.S. backed government right after the 2014 Ukraine coup. And they failed to assassinate Morales, and he's trying to lead his people towards overtaking the U.S. backed government. The U.S. backed government is responding with such brutal repression and anti-indigenous pogroms and in many cases such overtly racist violence that clearly the Bolivian proletariat isn't going to accept this. So that's encouraging news. We of course can't promise anything, but sometime soon Morales might be reinstated. I might be proven wrong, but that from the news that I've been hearing, that's a real possibility at this moment. So, obviously, a lot of encouraging things there. This massive popular upswell against the forces of empire throughout the third world, and aside from the this raw effort from the world's exploited peoples towards throwing off the tyranny of the U.S. empire, the U.S. empire is becoming weaker on its own. Not just the U.S. empire, but global capitalism in general. The global economy is headed for another recession that's going to be worse than the last one, and it's especially going to be bad in the United States because, unlike was the case during the 2008 crash, it doesn't seem likely that China is going to sacrifice its resources the next time to bail out the American economy, which of course plays into the larger dynamic of Chinese military, political, and economic power rising, will the American power is in decline. The United States has lost primacy throughout the Indo-Pacific, and China continues to rise and rally its forces, and China is increasingly functioning as a protecting force against U.S. invasion. It's largely because of China's military protection that the United States hasn't invaded Bolivia so far. So we're going to see all of this develop in the coming years. We're going to see global capitalism continue to collapse as this next recession comes up, and as bourgeois power deteriorates, especially Western bourgeois power, and we're also going to see the continued decline of American influence, not just throughout Asia and South America, but also in the Middle East, which is a region that the United States has been trying to so hard to control throughout the last 2 decades with its era of perpetual war. You realize that the United States has been perpetually at war since 9/11. It's been at war for so long in recent decades because this is really a reaction to the fact that American power is declining. The Iraq and Afghanistan invasions were partly done in reaction to the beginning of the decline of American power, and as micromilitarism so often goes, the Iraq and Afghanistan invasions set off a chain reaction that's since resulted in a steady decline of American power, is a steady decline of perceived legitimacy for America's decisions, and an increasing isolation of the United States on the world stage. The United States can no longer, it hasn't managed to pull off regime change in so many of its countries since 2014. It's failed to enact regime change in Bolivia. I mean, in Venezuela, in Syria, of course in China and Russia, and I misspoke about Bolivia, but like I said, the counterattacks from Morales' supporters very well might reverse America's momentary coup in Bolivia, and Morales could be reinstated very soon. And even if he isn't reinstated, there's going to be continued resistance from Morales' supporters, as well as continued uprisings from the victims of neoliberalism worldwide. And there's going to be a continued destabilization of global capitalism and U.S. imperialism, and a continued effort by the global proletariat towards building revolution, and ultimately towards building socialism. So in conclusion, of course we need to give our solidarity to the brave people in Bolivia who are resisting this tyrannical fascistic regime that's just been imposed upon them. And of course, the situation in Bolivia is quite dire. But the people in Bolivia are fighting back, and this represents a worldwide weakening of capitalist power and American power.